Everyone, welcome to marketSHARE, conversations with real estate's greatest game changers. Join us as we catch up with the real estate industry's most influential thought leaders and visionaries from coast to coast and around the world. Straight talk, every asset class, and always 30 minutes or less. marketSHARE is connecting the world of real estate. Before we get started, I want to take a moment to thank our industry partners from across the country. Our goal with marketSHARE was to bring the industry and its leading organizations together for conversations, that matter. In Canada, there are nearly 300,000 of us working in the real estate industry. In the US, over 1.7 million. That's more than 2 million people driving innovation and change every single day in North America alone, now more than ever before. These organizations supporting marketSHARE today are the voices of the 300,000 and beyond in Canada. They are truly at the forefront of innovation and change that is taking place in our industry. Big thank yous to these invaluable industry partners. First, Propmodo, our media partner, the Urban Land Institute, NAIOP, BOMA, Informa, Urban Analytics, and Chatterson. On our first episode of marketSHARE, we want to talk about forced innovation. What are the shifts that are happening right now across the industry in every asset class of the real estate sector? Globally, the real estate industry has always been a bit classic and a bit slower to innovate. Today, across Canada and the United States and all around the world, companies are adapting and innovating at breakneck speeds, mostly because we have to. Let me take a moment to introduce our guests joining us for marketSHARE today. First, Mr. Erik Karlsson. Erik Karlsson is the CEO and core founder of Anthem Properties. Anthem, based out of Vancouver, British Columbia, is one of Canada's largest residential and commercial developers with a $6 billion portfolio of more than 14,000 residential units, 5 million square feet of commercial. The road ahead for Anthem is a long one, with more than 5,000 acres of land banked for future development. Erik, thank you for joining us today.
Pleasure to be here.
Next, I'd like to introduce Trent Edwards, Chief Operating Officer for Brookfield Residential Alberta. Brookfield's presence globally is massive, operating in more than 30 countries around the world and managing more than 2,000 assets. Trent oversees Brookfield's operations in both Alberta and Australia and is tasked with leading a high-performance team through one of the most challenging times in recent history. Trent, thanks for coming on marketSHARE today.
Thanks for having me, Jay.
Finally, Bill Loger with Kingset Capital with headquarters in Toronto, Ontario. Bill serves as Kingset's Executive Vice President of Asset Management and oversees Kingset's real estate portfolio. In less than 20 years, Kingset has raised more than $20 billion in equity for its various verticals. Currently, Kingset owns significant interest in a nearly $15 billion portfolio. Welcome to marketSHARE, Bill.
Thanks for having me.
Bill, let's start with you first. How has the pandemic, and especially the slowdown in construction across the country, impacted Kingset's portfolio overall? How is your team at Kingset calculating and mitigating risk to come out of this stronger?
I think across all our portfolios, it's been a dramatic change in the last 6 to 8 weeks as we've had to shut down buildings, shut down sites in some places, and other places continue. In the Kingset portfolio, much of our development, or a large portion of our development, is currently in the pipeline of planning and development stages. So that has remained relatively unaffected. Design, development, entitlement applications, and submitted applications are all moving forward. And consulting teams in most cases have very robust technology platforms. And so they've adopted quickly, adjusted quickly, and we've moved from, many face-to-face meetings to Zoom meetings, editing drawings on different electronic platforms and continuing that collaborative process. And even the municipalities, although very slow to start, are now gaining some traction in terms of updating their technology. When it comes to actual on-site, in our case, our purpose-built multifamily residential projects are continuing because they're permitted to continue. But on those sites, we've seen some crew losses, but generally manpower has remained consistent. Some limited supplier delays, and production levels are approximately at 70%. So delivery will be delayed. And where the team's focused is, one, the big focus to health and safety now on sites, and particularly in urban tight sites. They're high sites, It's the vertical transportation that seems to be the big pinch point. And then how do you prevent people from moving back and forth? So not necessarily, breaking technology, but loading floors, getting sites, getting everything up. And so teams don't have to move as much. And when it comes to technology, they're looking at different programs in terms of how do you manage site traffic, how do you manage deliveries, how do you coordinate and do that all electronically or through some type of AI programming. And then they're focused on, what's the implication of cost delays, how we manage around that, how can we look at other pieces or different technologies to adjust for that, and anticipating for any future legislation that may have to be drawn on and addressed as we go through that. In our debt business, where we do a great deal of construction lending, even in this environment, they're continuing to do business. And so not new great technology, but they're focusing on being more selective, knowing your covenant and knowing your borrower is key. They're building greater budget and schedule contingencies, and they're lending at a slightly lower LTV. It's all really about managing the risk and being prepared to adapt to change. And so what technology is available, and we're rapidly exploring what's out there to adjust on the sites.
Thank you so much, Bill. Appreciate that. Trent, Eric, I'm going to hand it over to you. In Alberta, residential construction is really an essential service still, but the economy has been hit by many other factors: low oil prices, an already high office vacancy rate, and an oversupplied residential market. What needs to be done by developers in Alberta to survive and adapt? What opportunities are you seeing in the market today? Trent, your thoughts first, please.
Wow, thanks, Jay. And just to make sure I'm answering this correctly, you want survive, adapt, and opportunities. So let's start with survive. Right now it's extremely hard to try to delineate between what is COVID and what is the market. And until that time, we're going to continue to try to prioritize safety and health first, and not make any other rash moves, and just hunker down, but keep the team we have and continue to prioritize things that we can look to accelerate certain initiatives. So, in every market, there will be phases to this. Every city, survive, revive, and thrive, and each city or market's going to hit these at different points. And I don't see a button being hit as far as coming out of this from a normalization side of things. We're going to be in this for a while, and Alberta certainly for much longer than that. And we have to plan for those that are going to be much more cautious and conservative. Quick analogy: when I lived in Australia, I went to the beach and the shark horn would go off, and people would begrudgingly be coming out of the water. Of course, the Edwards family was sprinting out of the water to be safe. 3 or 4 minutes after everyone got out, the lifeguards got everybody out. It was quite interesting to see that people started to get back in. I thought they were crazy. I mean, we weren't going in that day. We weren't going in the next day. The shark was still in the water. And I think that's how we need to be thinking about planning in the future, is for those people that still believe that shark's out there and need to be cautious. How do we set ourselves up for that success? So I think Alberta, both from a market perspective, will be in that survive side of the equation for 18 to 24 months, and so we have to figure that out. And therefore we need to adapt, which was your next point. And it's still going to be safety and health first, and that's how we've had to adapt now. This has been great to have the team work remotely, to be able to put the safety and health first above anything else. From a social distancing perspective on site, closing up our shops, having to rely that much more on digital and new technology, which we were going there anyway, so this is helping accelerate that. So there's going to be a lot of things we need to do, whether it's Brookfield or cities. How do we need to adapt to give people the comfort and confidence to come back and shop with you? Opportunity-wise, we're seeing a lot more collaboration at the city level with the municipalities, both political and the administration side. How can we work together on moving the city forward? So lots of opportunities to help create safer places, but certainly how can we make business easier? How can we create a bigger tax base and also have the highest and best use for land. So there's a lot of things that are going in the right direction from that perspective. And then, of course, on the innovation side of things, technology and digital, I mean, those things are going to be huge as we move through this.
That's great, Trent. Thank you very much for that. Over to you, Eric. What are your thoughts? What needs to be done by developers in Alberta to survive and adapt this, and what are some of the opportunities that you see on the horizon?
Yeah, well, this is an interesting one. Using an old baseball analogy, it'd be kind of like we're in the 15th inning of a 35-inning ball game. You know, we're coming off of 2015 energy price crash and how a market that was just booming had to deal with that. We kind of ground our way through that, and then the stress test came up in 2018 to solve the Toronto-Vancouver affordability issue, you know, crushing the prairie provinces in Alberta with it, and how to get through that. And so coming into 2020, I thought, good, we're finally through that. And I've always been pushing the Alberta Advantage, you know, that there's energy and it's a big part of the economy, but Alberta's got a lot more to offer than oil and natural gas. It's got, you know, great people and, you know, a youthful, well-educated population, great, you know, physical infrastructure, great social infrastructure, and cheap real estate. You can buy a house cheap, you can get office space virtually for nothing. And, you know, why wouldn't you move a business here and raise your families here in a nice home rather than in a basement suite in Vancouver? And I felt really good about that narrative in January, February. And then all of a sudden we have COVID, and there's all the negative implications of COVID itself from the lockdown and what it's doing to the world economy. But then, of course, we have the energy double whammy. And so hence, you think you're out of one piece of difficulty in adversity, and then you get another one. And so you go, where's the opportunity? And I kind of laugh, you know. The opportunity is really about, you know, to pick up on Trent's narrative, it's about survival. It's about, in Alberta, as a developer, you have to find a way to carry the inventory you have now through to the other side of whatever this COVID canyon is. And it's a shorter canyon distance in Toronto and Vancouver, but it's long and wide in Calgary and Edmonton. And so you have to adjust your organization to dealing with that through having, you know, enhanced, say, best practices inside your company. You have to manage your liquidity like so carefully. It's like you got to micromanage that. And so the opportunity is to leverage the good corporate infrastructure you already have to do that. And I think that for Anthem, that would be our opportunity, because we've invested heavily in just being a better company, being a better organization, communicating well, cutting through all the BS, having a strong corporate culture. So we're trying to leverage that to sort of get through, you know, the continued adversity in Alberta. And the opportunity, you know, for growth would be, gosh, you know, when we get to the 20th inning of this very, very long ball game where it's 2 a.m. and everyone's gone home and we're tired, is to pick yourself up and keep going forward and take advantage of what might be there. And what I picture there when that time comes is way fewer ball players on the field. There'd be less competition, and there'd be more room for us to move residentially and commercially. I mean, all those Alberta advantages will still be there. With fewer competitors, and there will be distressed real estate. Let's not kid ourselves. And you know, with our financial partners, I think that we'll be able to add to our portfolio at the low-cost base to offer better value than other jurisdictions in Canada and the United States, and focus on the Alberta Advantage and focus on getting businesses to move to Calgary and Edmonton, distribution businesses, you know, technology businesses, things that leverage young, smart, aggressive people. And build homes for them and provide industrial space for them and appropriate retail for them, which we'll get into later in the discussion. So gut it out for a long time, then move forward.
That's great, Eric. Thank you so much. The Alberta Advantage, something that you know, we've heard about for many, many years, probably more important now than ever before. Eric, sticking with you, you own and manage a really diverse portfolio of projects, both in geography and asset class. How is Anthem pivoting to ensure you come out on top? Any particular asset classes in your portfolio being impacted more than others?
Sure, but they're all being heavily impacted, you know, in every market. You know, we've got 60 income properties, you know, about, I don't know, 4.5, 5 million square feet, and it's heavily weighted into retail. Well, of course, you know, we're locked down, so you know, people aren't going to the Gap to buy, you know, t-shirts and underwear now. They're either not doing it because they're not getting changed that often, or they're buying it online. And so, you know, whatever evolution was going into retail, this is really accelerating it. So, a lot of businesses are shut down. So collecting rent, from any income property asset class, but retail in particular, has been challenging. In April, we did quite well, but I'm expecting that the May rent that we're going to start collecting tomorrow is going to be smaller than it was the month before, because people are fatigued, and there's a lot of confusing federal government policy around tenancies right now. Don't worry, you don't have to pay your rent. Your landlord's going to get money from the government, so they tell us like they don't have to pay because Justin's got it taken care of, when really he doesn't. That policy is very ill-defined, and it's creating some complexity for us. So that's a huge challenge. But of course, on the residential side, try pre-selling a house right now. Try selling a condo right now. That's pretty difficult and pretty anemic. So challenge there. But as I said, I come back to what I said earlier. How do you navigate that? You have to. We've got every asset manager, every property manager, every leasing manager in our business is calling every day, every single one of our 1,200 tenants. How are you doing? How can we help? That hands-on touch, not emails like, hey, we're here to help, we're the government. Bullshit. We're actually, personally engaging with all of our tenants. On the residential side, we're personally engaging with all of our realtor partners, where anyone in our database is getting hammered with emails. We're still here. When you feel like coming out of your home, come and buy a house, come and buy a condo, we're here for you. So it's just about that intense micromanagement, that intense hands-on contact with your customer base to try to keep them at the table so they don't go away and forget about life and forget about Anthem and its products and all of that. So we're keeping the engine running through all these COVID processes. We're trying to keep the machine well oiled, and we're waiting. We're keeping some gas in the tank and gutting through this, and then and we'll, as I said, people will return. They will come out of their lockdown, and they'll start engaging, and we'll be through this scathed, scarred, but we'll come through it.
That's great, Eric. Thanks. Communication being key and priority on your list. Over to you, Bill. Bill, how is KingSett Capital supporting tenants and getting back to work right now? How do you see the office market adapting to this new world order when this is all over?
I think Eric touched on it a little bit in his comments. It's communication. Like we're chatting at all asset classes with every tenant, to understand what their needs are, how their business is coping, what they're doing to react. In some cases we're talking rent, in some cases we're talking how they're operating. One, you're trying to assess who's there for the long term, who's your quality tenant, who's working with you, who's being open and upfront with you, and those who are admittedly some taking advantage of today's circumstances, who have strong enough balance sheets but are trying to take advantage. And so you're trying to assess those out. But as we get ready to go back to work, it is engaging with every tenant. This will end at some point, and every tenant has a view of how they're going to come back to work. And it's important for us to understand what their expectations are, how they're planning to do that, how many people they're planning to bring back, what their procedures might be, because we want to make sure those interact and integrate with what we're doing at the building level. And so, we've seen recently a number of, organizations publishing guidelines, whether it's the Cushman and Wakefield guideline that came out, BOMA Canada's preparing one, in Toronto, the Financial District BIA's prepared one. Those will end up being, I think, the guiding principles in many people's reopening plans. But from there, you have to focus on the specific asset, because every asset has a different tenant base or unique circumstances to it. And so I think it's very important that there's some consistency and cohesion, because at the end of the day, we want our customers to feel safe. We want them to feel that they can walk around and that they understand the programs. And so whether they're walking through the Plus 15 in Calgary or they're walking through the Path in Toronto, when they go from one building to the next, it's not a completely different set of circumstances, so they don't know what to expect. And so consistency is important, but also specific policies and procedures for buildings in terms of how they access and how they do that safely. When it comes to how this all shakes out and what the next step of office is, we're probably a little too early to draw conclusions on that. In the short term, do we see some phased occupancies and lower, physical occupancies of people in buildings? For sure. I think that's going to happen. We're going to see some offset work timelines. Will we see groups coming in and call it shifts, calling different start times, whatever that may be? I think there'll be a great move towards making buildings as frictionless and touchless as possible. And that's part of that safety piece and the technology that's growing around that and continuing to evolve on that. And how do we in the context of physical distancing and keeping people safe, how do we provide that benefit? And then adapting how companies are going to work. KingSet, for example, we moved 105 people seamlessly to work at home in about 2 or 3 days. And we weren't a work from home environment. And I think many companies have successfully done that. And so there'll be similar experiences, and it's heightened the conversation about work from home, co-working. How does that happen? And I think many companies are going to consider, at least in the short term, flexible working options. And that's part of how you bring your staff back. What we're hearing out there in the market, some people are thinking there may be some de-densification. Now, we'll see how that shakes out. Perhaps some as people are trying to get safe environments. And there'll be, continued flexibility in workspaces. The end of the day, the driver is how do people stay safe and healthy, our customers, and how do we create collaborative, creative environments where they can be productive and excel, but feel safe doing so. And so that'll take a couple forms. I think it'll evolve significantly over the next little bit, and it'll be a phased process as people get used to coming back to what once the crisis is done and they get back to work.
That's great. Trent, over to you. Question for you. How is Brookfield enhancing the sales process and customer experience now so you can come out of this on top? What technology tools are you considering with this sudden change in how qualified traffic is actually being generated in the first place?
Yeah, great question. First of all, what I'll say is right now we're not looking to enhance the sales process and how we define it, and I'll get to that in a second. Right now it's all about safety and health first. So how can we provide a safe and healthy environment for our customers to shop, and technology, digital, those things have to be able to be used in order to keep the customer healthy and safe. So that takes enhancing the sales process to me needs to achieve 3 things, at least how we look at it. One is it needs to provide that ability to increase sales. 2 is it needs to enhance and improve the customer experience so it actually feels better, makes it easier for them. And 3 is it needs to reduce selling costs. This can't be something that ultimately will increase sales, but at the same time increase our costs to sell. Now, very hard to find things to put in place that achieve all of those 3, but it has to achieve at least one of those and not hurt the other 2. So the types of things that we're looking at is how can our customers shop virtually? How can they build, price, and ultimately buy a home while they're sitting in their living room in their pajamas? And it was interesting, over the last little while, we actually even had an offer on a house using Bitcoin. So needed to explore that and see if this was something we could even do. The Law Society shut that one down, so can't do that. But ultimately, whether you'll buy a house with PayPal, I guess we'll see. But ultimately, how are we enhancing that overall experience for the customer and not having to actually interact with somebody until they're ready or want to? So we have a suite of tools called Empower that is basically trying to enhance this experience with the customer, and it could be digitally or physically without actually having to talk to a salesperson. So a couple of examples that we have on that. One is it's called My Time, which is unattended access. So you log into our website. You say I want an appointment for that particular house that's listed, and they'll get a code that for a particular hour of a day they get to go in. There's no salesperson there. Once they get into the home, obviously there'll be a lot of information from a pamphlet perspective, hard copy, but also artificial intelligence. So you can ask 100 questions that the AI would understand how to respond to that. And if you're still excited about the home, you have the ability to talk to a live person online. You can talk to them through our website or on the phone. There'll be an online salesperson available and ready to go. And interestingly, this is obviously something that's stepped up a lot over the last little while with the COVID pandemic. But we see this as something we need to continue to offer as we move forward. And prior to the pandemic, where we were using it, interestingly, the amount, and this may be a hard thing for some to hear, but the amount of broker or realtors that were involved in our transactions where we did have my time actually went down. People were able to educate themselves, get comfortable themselves before they talked to a salesperson, and once they talked to the salesperson, they were fully engaged. So that's one. And then the second one that we've been using a lot recently is called I See What You See, which is really just FaceTime on steroids. It's agnostic, so it's web-based. It's agnostic to the type of device that you have, and it has the ability to video what you're looking at without taking up a bunch of storage room. And so we've been using this to show customers what's going on in their home as it's being constructed. We've been using it with trades where they will show us what they've done, so that we can sign off on that and allow the next trade to go in, again, from a social distancing perspective. And city certification, when we have people wanting to make sure that we can go on to the next step, that these guys have the ability to see the video, see what's been done, and you can actually draw right on the device on the phone, just like you could on an iPad. And say, I want to see more about this or whatever. It's very interactive that way. So just a couple of things that we're trying to obviously leverage technology and really prioritize this safety and health first, but ultimately give the customer a lot of flexibility in how they want to shop. And we believe more people are going to want to be shopping in their pajamas as we move forward.
Bill, question for you. Avison Young had recently reported how smart organizations, smart buildings, smart cities that can effectively harness data and technology will be at a clear advantage. What innovations or tools do you see succeeding in asset classes like retail, commercial, and hotel post-COVID? Do you see expectations of the consumers and the tenants and the guests changing very much?
Yeah, I think, over the last few years, particularly the real estate industry has been inundated with Proptech. All kinds of different items have come out, all different things have been proposed. Some have been good, some have not, some have worked well. In our COVID experience, I think the development of that type of technology just further accelerates. I read a quote this morning from the CEO of Microsoft that said, we've had over the last 2 years, we've completed 2 years worth of digital transformation in the last 2 months. And so that's pretty compelling. And I think that just continues. We've already seen it, whether it's what Google and Alphabet's trying to do on the Toronto's waterfront with the smart city, or buildings putting backbones and different products into their buildings. And it's all, I think, fundamentally about gathering as much data as you can so you can operate, control your building, have information to provide a customer service experience that is second to none. And so I think the more data we have, the better we can improve our operations. And innovation that allows for that will continue to grow, and those will be the ones that succeed. And whether that's AI developments and the ability to monitor and control HVAC systems so your environment is better for your customers, whether it's enhancing technology that enhances frictionless access and entrance and operations of buildings, innovations that enhance safety, whether it's microbial deterrent services or anything like that. I think those will all benefit because we're trying to drive to a safe, seamless customer experience. And in the stores, it's been touched on earlier, in the retail world, there's been a move. We've all lived through online orders over the last couple of weeks. People are getting used to that. And so it's adapting with your retailers to help, in some cases, facilitate that, but perhaps drive some of that through, our retail centers and to continue that vibrancies. And in the hotel experience, again, you want to know you're staying in a clean, safe environment. And so whether you have a further expansion of, electronic check-ins, you're not touching people, talking to people, carrying your own bags, knowing your room is being cleaned properly and in a certain way, making sure and being able to communicate that and control that so that your customers know that they are in a clean, safe environment so that they have a great experience. Those are the technologies that I continue to drive, and I think they're evolving. There's going to be new ones. The ones that we've seen will be surpassed by better ones, and that will continue to happen through all asset classes.
Thanks, Bill. One of the things a rumor that I had heard lately is that as a result of COVID, that the minibar in hotel rooms is about to disappear. Any truth to that statement?
I read that same article somewhere, and I'm sure there'll be some of those changes. Again, it's touch points. Who's handling how many of your things? Just think of what we've been doing with packages on our front porch. Leave them outside, spray them with Lysol, whatever that people have been doing. It'll take a while, I think, for people to get back to some type of normal. Will to be, okay, someone touched it, doesn't matter to me anymore. But for a while, it'll be, how many touch points have there been in whatever I'm working on?
Yeah. Thanks, Bill. Appreciate that. Eric, over to you. What innovations do you predict will change or improve the residential shopping experience? What is Anthem doing to stay ahead today so you're on top of it tomorrow?
I think it's just going to speed up what was happening anyway. I mean, people's habits are changing because of technology, digitization, virtual reality. And as people get better at handling those things, they'll want to use them more because it enhances their set of choices they have. So the shopping experience has to incorporate those new opportunities because people want them. And what COVID's done is it just, because people are locked down, A, they're learning more, and B, their preferences are slightly changing. And so it'll just speed up the adaptation of those types of sales processes. But in addition to that, it's creating new habits, new human behaviors, and we have to create new sales processes to deal with that. So right now, we're still trying to sell homes, we're still trying to rent apartments. We're doing a lot more virtual reality rather than having just little graphics up on the up on the website. It's much more interactive, and we're rolling that out sort of one website at a time now. And chances are that would have happened in late 2020, 2021. It's happening now. We're investing in it now, and so I think that enhances the shopping experience.
Eric, thank you so much, gentlemen. This has been a great first session of marketSHARE. Very grateful for your time today, Eric, Bill, Trent. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thanks for having us.
Before we go, look out for the next marketSHARE conversation coming up on Wednesday, May 20th, where we look at the silver linings of the crisis and the opportunities on the horizon for the real estate sector. Many are set to gain and thrive looking to the future. Who and what will be the big winners and game changers coming out of this global crisis? We'll be announcing our guests for marketSHARE's May 20th episode in the coming days. Stay tuned to marketshare.tv for more information. Again, a big thank you to our media partner, PropMoto, and our invaluable industry partners, BOMA, NAOP, Informa, Urban Analytics, Chatterson, and the Urban Land Institute. See you next week.